November 19th meeting of your Alamosa City Council. Would you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There, we got a monitor that went out over here.
Jim? We have a monitor that's out up here, Jim. Thank you. This evening we have Holly and Helen. Thank you for being here, ladies. All the women are over here. That is wonderful. Welcome. And we're okay. We're ready. Holly, we'll start with a roll call. Start voting, please. Holly?
All councilors present, and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you, Holly. Next up is the agenda approval. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to our agenda?
There is none.
If not,
If not, Mayor, I'll make the motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none. Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, we have citizen comment. Alamosa City Council welcomes your comments. Citizens wishing to speak up to 3 minutes may obtain and complete a speaker card through the city clerk at the start of the meeting. Please be aware of the fact that there is a 3-minute time limit, and we try to hold everyone to that 3 minutes. Thank you for that. First up, we have Chet Choman. Sir, would you come to the microphone, give us your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Chet Choman. I live at 819 Cottonwood Circle. We have a situation that it appears council is familiar with because it's an agenda item as far as the ranch, which is right next to the area that we're concerned with. And we have a noxious weed problem that has been growing tremendously over the last 3 or 4 years. We did get in touch with the city representative last fall, a year ago last fall, and they had indicated that they would look into it and try to do something with it. If I could, I'd like to pass out some pictures. The first picture represents the subdivision that we're talking about, and the area around it is property that is actually owned by the city. It's a wetlands designation that surrounds the particular subdivision. 3 years ago, we were just seeing just a few plants. You'll see in that second picture, it's pretty well taken over. Yeah, that's white top and Canadian thistle. Both of those are very noxious weeds that will take over. And in looking at the agenda, it appears that you're looking at an item as far as the ranch goes. Well, this September, if you would have been out there when the wind was blowing a little bit, it looked like it was in the middle of a snowstorm, and it was all going onto the ranch. So a lot of that problem is actually emulating from this particular area, and it really is something, since these are mandated by, I believe, state and district law, It really is a problem that needs to be eradicated before it gets any worse. It keeps quadrupling in size, it seems, just in a short period of time that we've lived out there. We do have a gentleman here, John Burnell. He and his brother actually started the weed control district for Alamosa County, and John wanted just to say a few words if he could.
Thank you, Mr. Choman. Mr. Brownell, you've got 3 minutes, sir.
I'd like to do it less than that. John Brownell, 714 Cottonwood Circle. We do have quite a problem out there. Canada thistle, white top, knapweed. I think we have anywhere between probably close to a dozen or more different species of noxious weeds. State mandated, county mandated, and city mandated to control. We have some bare lots. I think there's been notification to those landowners to mow or control the weeds. There's been a mowing that's taken place sometimes in the spring, sometimes in the fall. That is more of a, I would call it a stopgap measure. It's not a control measure. Some sort of eradication is necessary to stop that weed. It's taking over our area. It's going to take over the ranch just as well. I'm sure Heinz is going to hit on that tonight. So we're more than willing to work with the city in any way we can, or if the county needs to help out with some funding too, I mean, whatever. We're willing to work with anybody on it to develop a noxious weed map and then work on it that way. It's very controllable if we stay on it and do what we need to do, but right now we're not, what our program is not working. So if you've got any questions.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Brownell or Mr. Choman? Councilor Grego?
John, you said you're willing to help with funding. Is there a group that you work with that gets funding to do noxious weeds or what?
Willing to help you find funding.
Oh, find the fund, okay.
I think our HOA would probably have
Some kind of
some
funding.
monies available. Be glad to go to the commissioners and meet with
Okay.
them also if it's going to be probably a county problem as well. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure, thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Anyone else? Thank you, John, and thank you,
you for your
Chet. This evening, we do have business brought forward by city staff specific to the ranch and an update on, I'm sure, this particular subject. So we all realize that there are issues with noxious weeds out on the ranch, and I'm sure that Heinz has probably been looking into it and trying to find a way to deal with that. So we are totally aware of that. Sometimes we just maybe are a little slow in dealing with the issues, but we'll get caught up on that this evening. Thank you for that. Next up is Ferris Burvig. Thank you for being here, Mr. Burvig.
Thank you, Council, for taking a few minutes of your time. I'm basically here regarding an item that's on the agenda for a little bit later on, but wanted to make some comments. The Foote family, Stacy called me, and she's not able to be here this evening. She's a physical therapist in Payson, Arizona at the hospital and could not come up to address the issues. So she called me as her friendly neighbor to take and represent her here. And so we're talking about annexation issues. And she's had conversations with Pat and putting this annexation thing together. And my reason for just wanting to spend a couple of minutes here with you is the fact that the annexation discussion that took place with the Public Works Director, and I might not have it totally straight, but is the fact that she's been asked to take and dedicate or give the city foot traffic, an easement for the annexation. And she's concerned that if she says no to that there's a question that you'll probably not want to annex the property. Now, I know there's a question that the Corps of Engineers has with having a right to the levy. And that, of course, basically was pretty much settled back in the late 90s when they did the levy as such. They have maintenance and emergency and any other kind of need that they have for taking care of the river levee, that's in place. But the people that live along the river on the top, as far as foot traffic is concerned, that's another situation. And I don't believe that anybody on El Rio, or I know that the Dailies and the Foots, and then going up to the condos, and I think the Burrows is probably still in the county, but I'm not positive about that, but I believe they still are. That doesn't exist. But my point is this evening that on the other side of the river, on the levee that goes from the new property that just was bought and sold by people to develop that, and I know the city's still working with them on some foot traffic rights there, and then you go along the river and you get to the golf course, and you get to the top of the levee along the golf course, and past that you go up to the ranch on the levee. That's excellent foot traffic levee. You don't really need one on both sides of the river, because if you're going to have one on the other side of the river and you're going to deal with the property owners that don't want to have people walking across their property, unless somebody, maybe 25, 30 years from now when they're dead and gone, maybe there's a way to take and, acquire some of that. But right now, a fine walking path for the citizens of this community exists. I use it on a regular basis myself with my wife and my dog. And many, many other people are walking the same way. And so it's in existence. And there might be a pocket or two yet that still isn't qualified for that. But her concern is that why in the world are we taking and putting this into an annexation agreement that's part of the agenda a little bit later, which I'll also have an opportunity during the public hearing, to make a comment or two. But I wanted to call your attention to the fact that she feels it's totally unreasonable to take and expect her to have to do that. And if she says no, you're going to say no to the annexation. All she's trying to do, as you're well aware of if you've read the annexation, is to take and subdivide that extra lot off of the lot that has the home on it, so that she can either use it herself or sell it to somebody or whatever else would be the case. And the property, of course, goes back over into the river. And when you get across the levee, it's presently in the county. And that is why there is this request to annex it. So there's a parcel of land that we can use and develop separately. So I just want you to know as a council that I'm here not on a personal issue. I'm here because I'm being a good neighbor to my neighbor who's in Arizona and can't get here. And she feels like, would you make call it to the attention that what they want is already in existence on the north side of the levee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Burvig. Appreciate it. We will be dealing with that public hearing under the business brought forward by City Staff Public Works. Thank you. Next up, we have Leslie Martinez.
Hello, and thank you for having me. My name's Leslie Martinez. My family has deep roots here, and I want to thank you guys for welcoming me into Alamosa. I'm a student. I started at Trinidad State here in Alamosa first, when I first moved here in 2011, and now I'm at Adams State and about to graduate. Every year that we've had a Christmas toy drive since I got here. And this year is our third annual one, but it's kind of gotten bigger. This stack of cards I have here are the families that are not represented by any of the organizations we have. They're hardworking people that just really, once December hits, they get floored. They either go in debt or they can't provide gifts for their children. So I took nominations, people nominated people, and this represents a lot of our good citizens that just need to make it to Christmas. What I'm asking is, I had went to City Market and asked if they had vouchers for like turkeys, because we're putting food boxes, pajamas, and toys for the children and books. And they said that the city has vouchers, but that I would need to come and talk to you folks about maybe being able to get some of them. And I would only need 30. The other part to me being up here is because we are going to have a fundraiser to get all these people toys for their children and pajamas. And so we're renting the ballroom at the Rio Grande, and I wanted to see if the city might be able to help me accrue it. I have done the deposit, but I'm just a single parent too, so I've been sponsored by Trinidad State Junior College as far as the pajamas. Adams State student government has also pitched in. They're getting the books and providing canned foods. And so I have used the resources that I have available, but I would really like it to see if the city might be able to help also.
Thank you, Leslie. I think at this point in time, we're probably going to ask staff to look at the request, make a recommendation to council, and then we will probably make a decision. Is that something that works for you?
Yes, I would be glad to give them any information they need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll have the follow-up. Would staff like to follow up on any of these items specific to the Christmas toy drive, the weed control, or the annexation issues? Or shall we just continue? You want
I
to study
think
those, or?
In regards to the noxious weeds, when Heinz provides his update, he can include information in relation to that. During the public hearing, when Pat addresses the issue we have before you, we have a map that can highlight the trail and how this fits into it, and some information related to that. In regards to the two issues that Ms. Martinez brought up, to clarify quickly, so we can all be on the same page, the city does not have turkey vouchers. That's not something the city has. But I will contact Ms. Martinez. I had tried a few times, but I'll call and we can discuss her request for renting the Inn of the Rio Grande and bring that before council. But in regards to the turkey vouchers, that's not something the city has.
Thank you, Heather. Any questions or comments from council?
One
Councilor
comment,
Reagan.
Mayor, if I may, please, on also with Mrs. Martinez, there's several groups out there that really address this problem, and I've sat on maybe 3 or 4 of them, and I know that those might be the ones added on top, but if you need help, there's funding available for that also, so, for stuff like that. And I could probably get you the names too afterwards on the groups that do help with not only toys, but with food and stuff like that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Councilor Vigil?
Yeah, just a question for Ms. Martinez. Do you know how much you're looking at to rent the place?
Rio Grande is $450. I've already placed $150, so that leaves $300.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Gillespie?
Yes, I also know of a group that would be interested in providing some donations, so we will get in contact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gillespie. And thank you for the citizen comments, and thank you for the follow-up, staff. Next up, we have 2 ceremonial items. Proclamation for Diabetes Awareness Month, presented to Monica Wolf, Program Administrator of South Central Seniors Incorporated, and a proclamation for National Family Caregiver, presented to Lucretia Smith, ADRC, Coordinator of South Central Seniors Incorporated. Is Monica Wolf here? Would you like to tell us a little bit about Diabetes Awareness Month before I read the proclamation and present it to you? Thank you for being here, Monica.
Okay, well, we have asked the city to proclaim November as national, or the city's month for diabetes, just because the valley itself, of course, is very high in diabetes. And it seems like, we've got stuff for heart disease, we have cancer, that type of thing. And because diabetes is so prevalent in the valley, it doesn't seem like we have very much going on for diabetes. The diabetics around the town and those that are pre-diabetic and whatnot, they do get the help that they need. But I think that a lot of them are kind of left behind just in their day-to-day self-management portion. Through South Central Colorado Seniors, and anybody that doesn't know who we are the Area Agency on Aging here in the San Luis Valley. We do offer services for the older adults. And one of our biggest programs is the nutrition program, and that is the homebound meals as well as the congregate meals. And we started this evidence-based programs, which consists of diabetes and chronic disease, about 3 years ago. And what we do is we go out into the community and we teach classes in regards to the self-management of these chronic conditions. And what we do with those is we just hope that those that have the chronic condition, or maybe their family members, caregivers, that type of thing, can work with them so that they can live a more healthy life. Our mission through South Central is definitely to keep the elderly in their own homes and as healthy as we can. And we feel that by offering the evidence-based programs, then along with the nutrition and their doctor visits and that type of thing, that it'll help them stay healthier and they can stay in their own homes.
Thank you, Monica. And so with that, I will read this proclamation for National Diabetes Month, November 2014. And after I'm done with this, I will have Holly sign it, I will sign it, and Councilor Gillespie will present it to you.
Okay.
National Diabetes Month, November 2014. Whereas nearly 30 million Americans have diabetes, affecting men and women of all backgrounds and ages, and can cause serious health complications, including blindness, kidney failure, heart disease, stroke, and amputation. And whereas during National Diabetes Month, we stand with all those battling this life-threatening disease, along with their families and caregivers. We pay tribute to the advocates, healthcare professionals, researchers committed to supporting healthy lifestyles within the community. And whereas most commonly diagnosed in young people, type 1 diabetes has no known method of prevention. Type 2 diabetes accounts for 90 to 95% of diagnosed cases of diabetes in adults, and the risk of developing it is commonly associated with old age, obesity, physical inactivity, and family history of diabetes. And whereas 1 in every 3 children could become diabetic in the future, and whereas in our community is home to providing medical and education approaches to managing diabetes, which including the medical efforts provided by all medical staff, physicians, nurses, PAs, MAs, nutrition and diabetes education directly through the clinics and hospital, outreach programs such as day-to-day self-management workshops, efforts to curb childhood obesity, and many other strategic efforts to detect diabetes and to help people manage the disease. And whereas an increase in community awareness significantly enhances the ability of diabetics, their supportive friends and family to better understand and deal with this chronic disease. And whereas we urge all citizens of our community to recognize the rapidly growing incidence of diabetes, learn about its symptoms, and support the innovative approaches being developed here to achieve our goal of making the city of Alamosa one of the healthiest places in which to live. And whereas we all deserve a chance to lead healthy lives and achieve our full potential, during National Diabetes Month, we honor the memory of those we have lost to diabetes and commit to pursuing solutions that will shed light on this disease. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Lucero, Mayor of the City of Alamosa, and on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, do hereby proclaim the month of November to be National Diabetes Month in the city of Alamosa, Colorado, given under my hand and the seal of the city of Alamosa this 19th day of November, 2014.
Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Comments?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Council, do we have any questions or comments for Monica?
I just have a few comments. I've always heard that diabetes is very prevalent in the valley, and the fact that 1 in 3 children may develop diabetes, I think is very alarming. So we all know someone that, either neighbor, a friend, or family that has diabetes, and we need to work on this, get a cure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Gillespie. Councilor Coleman?
Monica, I would like to add a comment too, and I have an aunt who passed away earlier this year, diabetes, and I would like to thank you for bringing awareness of this disease to our community, and I believe that promoting a healthy living lifestyle in our community is going to be very crucial in us overcoming this disease, so thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. And on behalf of Council, Monica, thank you for being here and for making this a priority in our day.
Great. Thank you very much to all of
Thank
you.
Next up, we have a proclamation for National Family Caregiver presented to Lucretia Smith, ADRC Coordinator of South Central Colorado Seniors Incorporated. I will ask Lucretia to come up and maybe say a few words before I read this proclamation. Thank you for being here, Lucretia.
Thank you. So the president, he proclaimed November as National Family Caregiver Month for the United States. We wanted to extend it to the city of Alamosa. I have been the ADRC coordinator for South Central Colorado Seniors for about 2.5 years, and we have 2 programs that deal with caregivers. Since I started, we've had an increased request for people that need caregivers, whether it's parents, taking care of the kids, or grandparents taking care of the kids, adults taking care of their parents. The need is just growing overwhelmingly. Right now, our programs have a wait list. We just want to make people more aware of how important caregiving is and will be as people get older. I think for some people, they don't look at it as something that is of importance to them, but they'll see, like, when it's someone close to them, how much it really is. And we just want people to be more aware of it now instead of waiting until it comes to the time that they're going to need it for themselves.
Thank you, Lucretia. And so with that, Council, I will read this proclamation, and then I will ask Councilor Coleman to present it to you. Proclamation, National Family Caregiver Month, November 2014. Whereas 2 out of every 5 adults in the United States are family caregivers. 39% of all adult Americans are caring for a loved one who is sick or disabled, which is up from 30% in 2010. And whereas more than 15 million family caregivers are providing care to more than 5 million loved ones with Alzheimer's disease, and whereas the number of parents caring for children with special needs is increasing due to the rise in cases of many childhood conditions, and whereas as many as 1 million Americans are caring in their homes for service members from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars who are suffering from traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, or other wounds and illnesses, and whereas men are now almost as likely to say they are family caregivers as women are, 37% of men, 40% of women, and 36% of younger Americans between 18 and 29 are family caregivers as well, including 1 million young people who care for loved ones with Alzheimer's, and whereas almost half of family caregivers perform complex medical and nursing tasks for their loved ones, such as managing multiple medications, providing wound care, and operating specialized medical equipment. And whereas, with the ranks of family caregivers growing every year, tens of millions strong, it is now more important than ever to recognize the vital role that family caregivers play. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Lucero, Mayor of the City of Alamosa, on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, do hereby proclaim the month of November to be National Family Caregivers Month, given under my hand and the seal of the City of Alamosa this 19th day of November, 2014.
Thank you.
Gentlemen? Thank you, Council. Do we have any questions or comments for Lucretia? Councilor Grego?
I'll yield to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank you for bringing this recognition, because we have gone through ourselves. My mother-in-law had Alzheimer's for 26 years, and the family came together to help her, and my mother had cancer. And so we know what exactly caregiving is all about, and we really appreciate you recognizing this as something that's really needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Councilor Coleman?
Ms. Smith, I applaud you and your team and the many caregivers who give care to family members and friends all over this country. I know it has to be hard and challenging, and the statistics are staggering when we look at the numbers in all of the different categories. So I would like to let you know that the little things that you do in our communities across the country make a huge difference in the lives of those that you serve. So keep up the great work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Councilor Gillespie?
I think most of us may be caregivers at some time or another during our lifetimes, and I think that's out of necessity, but we give thanks for that, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gillespie. Councilor Stefano?
I also want to commend you. I've been through it, taking care of my mother till she passed away. There's a lot of people that really, a lot of family members don't want to deal with it. And I think it's really an important role that we have to play for our loved ones. They raised us, and, we owe them at least that. There's a lot of kids that they don't want to deal with any of this stuff with their parents or grandparents, but it's a necessity that we really need to make them aware that it's all about love and giving care for the people that have helped us. Commend you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Stefano, and I will echo what Council has said. Thank you very much for your work. We really appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucretia. Council, if it's all right with you, I'm going to digress for a minute. We have one more citizen comment and got in here late. Is Melissa Hiron here? Melissa, would you give us your name and your address, please? You have a 3-minute time limit, please.
Sorry, and thank you for accepting me. So I'm Melissa Hiron, and I live at 705 Berkeley Avenue. And I just want to address to the council the concern about like maybe a stoplight at the intersection of Washington and Highway 160. When I take my son to school, it's very disturbing to see other pedestrians trying to cross with their children, and they're not fortunate to have vehicles, and the children's riding pedal bike, and the father's carrying another kid in a buggy, and it's very, very dangerous. My heart hurts for them every day, And other pedestrians, there was just a terrible accident there. I'm not sure of exactly what happened, but when I read that, it was very disturbing to know that it's a very dangerous intersection, and traffic is getting, more people are in the community, and I think it's to at least look into to see if there's something that could be possibly put there. Also at the intersection of 160 and First Street, I don't know exactly that is First Street, and I'm not sure if it's city or county, but it's at the intersection up by Loaf and Jug, where you're coming in either from Blanca or in from Hooper, that intersection. Again, I'm not sure if it's city or county, but that's another kind of dangerous intersection, whether you're a driver or a pedestrian. I just think that would be nice if we could look into it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa, and you are right, that intersection out there at 17 and 160 it's in the county, but both, I believe, are governed by Colorado Department of Transportation, and I know the council and staff have been working to try to make sure that a lot of our streets are safe. There was a terrible accident out there. We will take this under advisement and see what develops and what kind of negotiations we can make with CDOT, or if there's anything we can do about placing a stoplight out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that I would possibly address or go to any other places?
Heather?
I think our first step is, from a staff perspective, to evaluate what maybe different alternatives are for that location. And then, depending on that, either bring it back before council or have communication with CDOT. Depending on what our recommendations might or might not be, I think that's the starting point. So you've come to the right agency to initiate those discussions. If you want, you can leave your phone number if it's not on the card, and we can make sure that you're informed of as this progresses.
Okay, I appreciate the time to accept.
Melissa, another thing you might think about too is approaching the county commissioners about the safety issue out there at 17 and 160.
Okay, thank you again.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Next up, we have consent calendar A. Consent calendar allows multiple actions with one motion. Consent calendar A contains routine items which have been recommended for action by staff or advisory boards. Council may remove a consent calendar item for a separate consideration. Tonight, we will receive October 2014 expenditure report, approve minutes of the regular meeting November 5th, 2014, and receive October 2014 monthly reports. What are your wishes on consent calendar A, Council?
If there's no discussion, I move that we approve consent calendar A.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on consent calendar A? Seeing none, start voting, Council. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, we'll move on to regular business. We have a presentation from an outside agency, Dr. Simone from Trinidad State Junior College. Thank you for being here, Dr. Simone. Please approach the mic and
I very much appreciate the opportunity to visit with you a little bit tonight and tell you some about Trinidad State and share our vision with you. I have a couple of people here with me this evening. I would start just by saying that I've been president at Trinidad State for about 17 months now. I'm joined here this evening by Greg Boyce, and Greg's job is to make sure the technology works, so all the pressure is on him this evening. I'm also joined by Tony DeAngelis, and Tony is our Director for Development at Trinidad State. And a couple of people in the audience I want to point out. Jack Wiley is our Associate Dean for Career and Technical Education, and Ashley Cogburn is Student Engagement Specialist on our campus. And way in the back, Dwayne Oakes works with our CLETA program. So we have a lot of folks here with us this evening also.
well, thank you all for being here. I'm sorry I didn't recognize all of you. But
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go to the first slide then. And thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. A lot of you know the history of Trinidad State, but for those of you that don't, I'll just give a very quick reminder. 20 years ago, the San Luis Valley Area Vocational School merged with Trinidad State to form our Valley campus. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last spring. And since that time, we've been offering career and technical education here in the Valley. And we always offer programs that are complementary to what our bigger sister offers here in Alamosa, Adams State University. So it's very important to us that we work hand in hand and that we don't duplicate services. I'm going to give you just a very quick overview of what's been happening at Trinidad State recently.
You think you know about Trinidad State? Trinidad State in downtown Alamosa, at the intersection of higher ed and lower cost. TrinidadState.edu.
As you can tell from that very quick clip, our mission is focused on career and technical education. And we offer programs that support the trades. And you can see in that picture in the upper left-hand corner, we've got a welding student there. We also offer diesel program and automotive services programs. We have coursework in machining and construction technology. We have a couple of health science related programs. Nursing has been around for many, many years. We also offer a medical office assistant program and an EMT program. The introductory business courses, and of course, in the lower left-hand corner, you can see our signature program. That's our aquaculture program here in the Valley, and we're very proud of that program. It's a unique program in the state. We have about 400 to 500 students attending Trinidad State here in the Valley every semester, and about another 300 of them that are off-site, off-campus at various locations around the area. Last summer, you probably heard a little bit about our Adult Basic Ed program, and I just wanted to give them a quick shout out too. We have a terrific Adult Basic Ed program that we almost lost last summer due to some funding changes in the state. At the 11th hour, the state reversed a decision and kept funding in place for that program, and I think a lot of that thanks goes to the people of Alamosa and the whole San Luis Valley. We almost lost that program, so I'm glad that we didn't. We have faced a few challenges over the years, and one of those challenges at the top of the list has been a real turnover in leadership at our institution. I have a dean that came to me and said, you know, you are the fourth president I've worked for in 5 years. That is a significant amount of turnover at the senior leadership level. And over here in the Valley, we've had Valley vice presidents come and go consistently over the last 10 years. We have had many, many changes in leadership. And when that happens at an institution, that institution becomes very paralyzed and cannot seem to move forward. And we did suffer from that for a long time. I've been here, like I said, for 17 months. I'm not going anywhere. I keep telling people I am here for the long haul, and we are going to start to move this institution forward, and that's exactly what we intend to do. We've also had some enrollment challenges over the years, as many, many institutions across the country have, and the enrollment pattern is very similar. When the economy is good, our enrollments go down. When the economy is down, our enrollments go up. It's counter-cyclical. And each of those different scenarios brings different challenges for an institution, and we struggle with those challenges just like Adams State and just like many, many other institutions across the state and the country. Last spring, you probably heard a little bit about some of the financial challenges that we faced as an institution. As we dealt with those, we very much committed ourselves to transparency so that people knew what it was that we were dealing with and how we were dealing with that. We had revenue shortfalls. We had some very bloated spending patterns. We had unsustainable employment levels. And we had, I would say, a mess last spring. And the hard part about that was that no one recognized that that was happening, and I think that was because of a lot of the leadership turnover that we had at our institution. We hadn't tended our garden, as I say, in a very long time. We're emerging from that financial difficulty a much stronger institution. We are about 75% out of that hole. I'm very happy to report that to you. And I am proud of the resilience that we have as an institution. I can also tell you that I never want to go through days like I did last spring again. We laid off 20 people over the course of 2 days last spring. That's 10% of our workforce. And I sat down with each and every one of those people and looked them in the eyes, and I delivered the news to them. And you know, the funny thing to me was that most of them had a sense of where the institution was, and they weren't angry. They said, you do what you have to do to save this institution. I was so proud of those folks. And I'm proud of the resilience of our institution. I'm proud of the commitment that we have to our students. Last year, as we were going through that difficult period of time, we developed a set of core values to guide our institution. The first one on the list is the one nearest and dearest to my heart, students first. And that's how we make all of our decisions at Trinidad State. So we have critical work to do, and like I said, I'm here for the long haul, and I'm really proud of our institution. So a couple years ago, we had a really pleasant surprise. We were funded by the state of Colorado, finally, I could say, though this happened before I came to the institution, funded for an expansion project. This project was on the dockets at the state legislature for years, and it kept going back and not being funded, and being resubmitted, and not being funded, and resubmitted again. And I would say it was between 5 and 10 years of resubmissions over and over again until, voila, it was funded in the spring of 2013. We had enough funding there to build 2 new science labs and 2 new classrooms with this expansion project. And since the spring of 2013, been working really hard at getting this project off the ground, been working with architects, we have engaged with a contractor. Fencing has gone up. If you've driven by our campus, you've seen there's fencing up now, and construction is going to be starting any day. I drove past there on my way to the meeting this evening, and that ginormous fire escape has come down. Don't cheer, though, because we learned value engineering in the course of these projects. We had to go out to bid 3 times until we got a bid that came in at a price that we could afford. We're going to reuse that ginormous fire escape. We're going to move it from the north side of the building to the east side of the building. So you'll see it there in the picture in the artist's rendition. Yes, we will have a fire escape. We had to value engineer the internal staircase out. But we kept everything that was important for our students in that building. On the bottom level is where you'll see the 2 classrooms, and on the top level is where the 2 new science labs will be. So we're very excited about that project. We really need those improvements. We need the space. Our labs were woefully neglected before this project. So we're excited about this. And like I said, they're breaking ground. It's very, very exciting. At about that same time, 2 years ago, we received some land. Land was donated to Trinidad State. It was a very generous gift of 15 acres of land. There's a picture of it there for you that you can look at. Those 15 acres are adjacent to 5 acres that were donated to the institution back in 2004. So we have a total of 20 acres, though in 2009, 2 of those acres were leased away, and they were given so that we could build a highway patrol building on that site. And if you look on the far right-hand side in that picture, you can see the highway patrol building there. We have a 50-year lease where that highway patrol building is right now, and that's been leased out. So we've got 18 acres left to work with for our campus. Last December, we got the deed to that property. And there was one stipulation on that deed. We have to break ground on our new campus within 8 years, or that land's going to revert back to the donor. And we really don't want to see that happen. And 1 year has already ticked by. I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done over the course of that year. I'll have Greg change the slide. We started planning for a new Valley campus, and we got really excited about it. And that campus would have been one contiguous building that had shop space, classrooms, and labs, and faculty offices, student space. It was a beautiful, beautiful building. And between the 2 wings of the building, which you don't see on the picture, but between the 2 wings, there was a beautiful outdoor area where we were planning on holding graduation. And it was protected from the wind. So the wind does blow here every once in a while. We could still have our graduation ceremonies outside and not be affected by the wind. It was beautiful, gorgeous, $28 million project. We submitted it to the legislature last year, and nothing happened. And when nothing happened, and we started working really hard on our expansion project, some questions started coming up. You know, especially that question of why on earth are you building science labs twice? Isn't that a waste of money? You could argue that that probably would be a waste of money. So we went back to the drawing board after that rejection from the state legislature, or I'm sorry, that non-funding by the state legislature, and thought a little bit more deeply about our project. We really do need a lot more space, but we could do it a little bit more smartly, I think, and in a way that made sense. And the 2 projects that I inherited when I came in as president didn't seem to fit together very well. And I really think that that's one of the results of having leadership turnover like we did at our institution, where we were working in different directions in so many different ways. And when a new leader came in, they would change direction. And we were a bit disjointed, I think. So the project, or the approach that we came up with last summer was a phased approach. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this phased approach. What we decided to do is take that schematic that we had for that beautiful building and break it into pieces and think about how we could more strategically approach this project. And I'm going to show you some of the smaller projects, and one in particular that we're really excited about, but it's a standalone project, and it's phase 1 of our new Valley campus. It's a trades and industry building. As we were trying to decide which piece of this project to put forward first, trades and industry just made so much sense to us, because that is the core mission of Trinidad State here in the Valley. It's the hands-on technical programs that we're so well known for. And those are the programs where we really need the space now. Our science labs have been taken care of graciously by the state, and we are so grateful for that. We really need this trades and industry building. And so $14 million is what that building is going to cost. It's going to house those critical programs for us. The best part of this building project is on the inside of this building. It's a space for emerging technologies. It's a space for programs that we really don't know about yet. It's space that would allow us to be responsive to the needs of the San Luis Valley so that we could develop those programs as we need to and be able to offer those. So we're really excited about that. All of the Gen Ed programs that would support this would stay on Main Street. And we would use those new science labs for many, many more years to come. And it just makes a lot more sense to us to leverage what we already have and also build towards the future for ourselves. So, our request went to the legislature. It first went to the system office. We're part of the community college system, and there were 7 projects that were forwarded to the community college system. Our project was ranked number 4 out of 7 projects. All 7 of those were forwarded to the Colorado Commission on Higher Education, and the Colorado Commission of Higher Education received 21 new project requests. Ours was ranked number 13 last October. So we're at number 13 of 21 for higher ed. There are other projects that are going to come forward that are not higher ed focused. It would take $300 million to fund down to the level where we are on that list right now. Could the state do that? Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see. But one of the things that we need to do is move ourselves up higher on that list so we have a better chance of being funded. And so that's what we're going to be working on. One of the ways for us to do that is to bring some additional funding to the table so that we're not asking the state to fund everything, but we're showing the state that there are some resources behind this project and there's some real community support here in the San Luis Valley for this project. So we're going to do some fundraising, and we're going to try to show that we have skin in the game with this project. And we really hope to do that over the next few months to come. And one of the things I keep telling people is, wow, this building really needs a name. Maybe someone would like to put their name on that building. So we're going to talk to a few folks about that and see if we can find someone that would do that for us. So I hope that this presentation has given you some clarity on what's happening at Trinidad State, especially as we're out talking about building a new campus. At the same time, we're building this expansion project at our current location. Those projects need to fit hand in hand together, and we've designed it so that they do. And I'm, of course, always happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I want to thank you for your support of higher ed in the Valley. Our mission is very critical. We provide tools for students to change their lives. So thanks for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Simone. And Council, do we have any comments or questions of Dr. Simone? Councilor Vigil.
Yes, I had a question. First of all, thank you for coming up here and your presentation. I think higher education is very important, especially for the folks here in the Valley. Where are you at with enrollment? Up or down, same?
This semester, we're down slightly. We're about 5% down. And from what I'm hearing, all of our sister institutions are at about that same level, about 5% down.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Viego?
Let me also echo Vigil's comments on thanking you for coming down tonight. And one thing that I want to thank you also is for keeping the campus downtown open. Because right now we're going through the process with the counties moving some of their stuff out, you know, and it really, the economics of it really, when you shift stuff like that out, especially if you were to shift it out there towards Craft Street,
Right.
would really put a big deal, big benefit in our downtown area and stuff. So thank you very much for considering that and building it, and it does look nice. That was an old school years ago that they were going to tear it down, and all of a sudden people gathered together, and it's a beautiful facility, and now that you're adding to it on top of that, it's really beautiful.
Thank you. It's very important to us to have a presence downtown.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Councilor Johnson?
Just echo what Charlie said. You guys are real important to our downtown area. I think the community also needs to know that you guys do things outside of your buildings. First aid classes out in the community and stuff like that are just a tremendous asset to our community, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Dr. Simone, this entire council appreciates your presence and dedication to this part of Colorado, especially the San Luis Valley and Alamosa. And, you're providing educational opportunities in areas that other educational institutions don't provide. I went to Adams State in the mid-'60s, and they had one awesome industrial arts program, and they did away with that. And so there are a lot of students out in our community that need that industrial arts kind of background the background that helps you rebuild an engine or just work on a piece of iron welded or whatever, and I think that fills a great void that other educational institutions don't have. So we really appreciate you being here and the hard work that you're driven to do on behalf of our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilor Stefano.
I also want to thank you. It is a beautiful area. I know a guy that's going to the diesel program in school, and it's an awesome program. He tells me all about it, and the new building coming up is really an asset. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stefano, and thanks again. Next up, Council, we have business brought forward by city staff. We have Public Works, and we have a need for a public hearing on ordinance number 15, 2014, and ordinance approving the annexation of the 2014 foot annexation for the annexation of a tract of land located in the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter, section 1/3, northeast 1/4, section 4, township 37, North, Range 10 East, New Mexico Principal Meridian, Alamosa County, Colorado. Pat, thank you.
Thank you, sir, and good evening, council. This is the fourth time you've heard this. You're all familiar with the background on the project. Like Mr. Burvig said, she's wanting to annex the property because half of it is within the county and half is within the city limits. She wants to subdivide to create another building site. Throughout the process, you've expressed an interest in obtaining a public access easement across the property and with the intent of the eventual extension of the city trail system. The applicant has, at this point, has expressed no interest in granting an easement, and she cites concerns of privacy, property values, and security, and is requesting that council approve the annexation without the provision of the access easement. It is staff's recommendation, however, to pass the ordinance on second reading tonight with the stipulation that an agreement for public access is granted once access is obtained on either side of the property.
Thank you, Pat. Heather?
I think the other question that was raised tonight was the appropriateness of this to be handled through the annexation process. The annexation process is something where traditionally you do look at dedication of land for public use, either through parks, streets, right-of-way, trails, those types of uses. So it is a very appropriate time for council to consider this as part of the annexation. As Pat highlighted, our recommendation is that it would be for public access once the other properties on either side also allow public access. This map highlights the long-term vision that the city has had for the trails on both sides of this property. Additionally, staff has been communicating with property owners to make that section of the red and going west as long as possible to really create a regional trail that would generate a lot of use. In regards to our recommendation on this annexation, it's obviously something that fits into the long-term use. We're very well aware that there are some property owners that are already annexed and have no intention of ever granting this easement. It's at that time when the property changes hands that we would want to piece together some of the property. We're also coming up with some different ideas that there may be some property owners that if the city would build a fence or do some things like that, that they would be more open to it. So for those areas that we can take advantage of it now, we very much want to. And for those areas that we need to wait for a change of ownership, that would be our intent. In regards to this property, I would see from a council perspective, you would weigh, is it important enough issue to warrant if you annex the property or not. Long term, if we do not get the easement now, we would probably be faced with having to pay for that easement in the future. So that is the aspects that staff took into consideration when making this recommendation to have annexation be dependent upon public access.
Thank you, Heather. I know that the Army Corps of Engineer has stipulated many improvements and many changes that need to take place on that levee. And I don't know whether that plays into this part of it or not, probably not. But I know that council's vision has, we've had this vision for ever since I can remember of accessing both sides of the river levee. And I think council's directive at this point in time is very important. Anyway, are you done, Pat? Or?
I'm done unless you have questions for me.
Okay, do you
Be
have
happy to
any
answer
questions of
anything.
Pat at this point in time?
Just to answer the Corps of the levee question, the city right now already has the ability to gain access onto the property from maintenance perspective. There are along the levee a few areas where there's fencing that's been put up that prevents the city from doing that, and we will be working on those situations individually. But there's nothing that needs to change in regards to access for the city in order to maintain and meet the requirements that are set out. This item would be just specific to the public access.
Thank you, Heather. Council? Thank you, Pat. And so with that, I will open the public hearing on ordinance number 15, 2014. Anyone wishing to speak in favor or against ordinance number 15, 2014, please address the microphone, identify yourself and your address. Thank you.
Yes, again, my name's Ferris Burvick, 1903 Carroll Street. And neighbors to people on both sides of me are adamantly against. They bought the property many, many years ago, back in the 70s. And in the words of Stacy Foote, when she talked to me, she says, "The city is bullying me." Now, that's not my words, that's her words. And that's your job to clarify that to her, because she has a distinct feeling that you are taking unfair advantage of her from the standpoint that it's been many, many, many years. And I guess the most important thing I've said earlier, the time period that you're going to spend in getting public right-of-way or public pathway, whatever you want to describe it as, I'm not sure what you call it, on El Rio and the condo association and all those other areas, none of you will be on city council at that time. It's going to take years. And they have dug their heels in, and they are not going to take and say yes under any circumstances. So that's where I think she gets the feeling that on both sides of her, it isn't going to happen. And if you threaten her with the idea that she can't annex this if she just says no, that's where I think she gets the bullying part from this whole issue. So again, my reason for being here is just to present her position. I have no interest in it other than the fact that I'm a neighbor, and she couldn't be here this evening, and she asked me to speak for her. So council, I think one of the things that I remember being up there where you're at, and it's not easy sometimes to take a look at some of these issues, and they're all important, but so are the rights of the citizens in our community, whether or not they're 25 years old, 50 years old, or 2 years old. We, as members of the decision process up there, you need to give serious consideration to the concerns that they're being expressed tonight by me for her. And I wish she could be here, but her employment just wouldn't provide that because she's got a long drive back and forth. So any questions you have of me, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Burvig. Council, do we have any questions of Mr. Burvig? Seeing none?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Burvig.
Thanks for listening. And again, I'll reiterate, you've got a tremendous path on the north side of the levee that is used heavily. And none of us will worry about what's going to happen. on the other side, because it's not going to happen for years and years and years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burvig. Is there anyone else to speak for or against? Mr. McCann?
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa, Colorado. This is a situation where that's where you get the big bucks for what you're doing up there. Now, my interest in the whole situation was for the Foots to be able to subdivide the property and sell it. And I've known all the Foots for many years. They're good people, and what Mr. Foote did for this community, everybody knows what he did. But this is a vision of the city wanting access on both sides of the levee. You got to make a decision. All I care about is the lady to be able to subdivide the property. You're making the decision on access to both sides of the levee, which I don't want to get into.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against ordinance number 15, 2014? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Councilor Vihil.
Yes, I guess I have a question for Pat and Heather. To Mr. Burvig's comments, are we threatening Mrs. Foote without giving her the annexation if she doesn't give us the public right-of-way?
I think when you come at it from a technical planning perspective, what we try to do is take a long-term view of what does the city, where is it going to grow, what are its needs in the different areas. When you look at annexation, many times you have to try to look at what do you want in the future versus what's there right now. This is an annexation that's actually a little bit more in the community, so it's slightly different. But it's entirely appropriate when you take a look at annexations, if you need rights-of-way dedicated for road, if you need rights-of-way dedicated for parks, any matter of type of public uses, including trails. If you recall the discussions we were having on the Polston property, that was one of the main focal points as well, that the annexation would include public access on those trails. So it's in line with the direction that council has provided. There's benefits that she will receive from annexation, and it's a matter of making sure we protect the city's interest for that area. I hate that she would use the term bullying. It's still her choice at any point if she wants to receive annexation, and it's a matter of if we want to require that annexation or if we want to pay for it in the future.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Councilor Vihil. Councilor Johnson.
You clarified some of this, but I want to make this extremely clear, and I'll ask Pat or Heather. She applied for annexation, correct? We didn't pursue the annexation with her. Okay. Another comment, just a comment, is I think Mr. Burvig is absolutely right. It's going to take 20 to 30 years to get all of the areas that we're talking about, and we have to start sometime, somewhere. And you know, there's going to be property owners that we're not going to get that area for 20 years. Then Mrs. Foote's area is absolutely safe until that time. But if we don't start piecing it together, then that piece of property may very well be the piece of property that we have to wait 30 to 40 years if we don't take advantage of the situation we have right now. If you remember, we've had serious conversations with Adams State College about making a bridge across the river to access the area north of the golf course, and part of that planning is based upon a trail on both sides of the river and getting those Adams State runners access to run down the river instead of running down First Street, which is a very dangerous situation. So some of these discussions, you know, we have to look at this. Our decision has to be based on what helps our community, and maybe not in just one group of people in particular. And I think this is probably that time when we're not going to make everybody happy, but if you consider the entire community and the planning we've put forth, I think this is probably one of those times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Griego?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Burbick. We need to respect our constituents and help them in every way we can. We've gone through this process already once when we're putting this levy together where we bought properties along the river and paid people off for the properties. But Heather, you talked about maybe doing some kind of a fencing where I think if she was willing to give and we're willing to give, let's work together and put some kind of a fencing that maybe keeps people out of her backyard and yet still gives us the access through that property, through that levy. So there's ways of working this out instead of, and we're not here to bully nobody or threaten nobody. I think the deal is we're here to work together in a win-win situation for the city and for this constituent itself. So there should be a way to work it out where we can put some kind of a fence or something and still give them their privacy and allow us to go through that property. And maybe you can address it, Heather.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Heather?
The concept of the fence came up because I think council was very aware that for some of these properties, it will feel as if people are walking in their backyards. And there is some strong resistance in some area. And I think the idea of if we could maybe use as a carrot the concept of maybe 3 or 4 different designs that the property owners could pick from a fence to add a little bit of security or sense of separation, that was something we'd be willing to do to try to help. And I think that would be in line with those discussions, to have that discussion with her.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Gillespie?
Yes, my comments are the same as Councilor Johnson. I think if the city or Adams State places a bridge in that area, we do need access to both sides of the dike. And I would urge council to move forward with this annexation only if we're granted access to that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Gillespie, I'm sorry. All right. Is there any further discussion on ordinance number 15, 2014? Councilor Vihil.
I think Mr. Burbick has a question.
The public hearing is closed. And so this is back to council. It is council's decision at this point in time. Is there any further discussion?
I got a question, Mayor. To have these discussions again with her as far as the fencing, what would be the process? And maybe, Pat, maybe you could help us out here. Would we delay this annexation or should we pass it with, contingent upon maybe having these discussions and coming up with something that would work for both of us? What would the process be?
Depending on your decision tonight, we can, if you pass the ordinance tonight, contingent on the execution of an agreement with the applicant for the public access when we obtain access on one side or another, the annexation obviously we wouldn't record the plat in the ordinance until we had that agreement. We can, I guess you have the option to direct us back to negotiate with her further.
Is there some kind of a deadline or something in the process that they want to get this done to maybe, were they going to sell the property?
Yeah, she wants to subdivide to sell the building site to the north of the existing house. She has the house for sale.
So to summarize council's options, if you were to vote tonight that it be contingent upon the public access, we would obviously begin discussions with her right away with the option of the fence. That's not something you would need to amend the wording for tonight. I think, that can be clear direction to have the discussion on the fence. The item you would vote on tonight is whether or not annexation's contingent on that. It would still be her choice. However, if council is not sure that they would deny it if we're not able to come to an agreement, then you may want us to try to reach an agreement and bring it back before you. But again, as Pat's indicated, she is trying to sell the property, so that could delay it somewhat. So to a certain degree, it depends on if it's 100% contingent upon the public access, regardless if a fence agreement can be reached or not, then that may be why you need to vote tonight. If it's something that the fence would impact your decision, you may want to postpone the vote.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Griego?
I guess personally myself, I would rather see if we can sit down with this constituent and find a halfway medium and then bring it back to council. It's winter time now, so I don't know if any kind of action is being done out there in the process. So that's me personally. I don't know how the rest of the council feels.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. I do have an observation. The person that is wanting to annex obviously doesn't live here, is going to sell the property that she owns now, as well as the new property that's being annexed. So really, ownership in the property is secondary to what council's vision, long-term vision is, as far as acquiring access to the levee. And so it would seem kind of, I don't know, trifle for her to say, if you don't, I mean, you're bullying me to annex, but I'm going to sell the property anyway. So I'm kind of in a quandary when it comes to that. I just kind of believe that council's long-term vision was to make sure we had access to levees on either side, and I think we should just continue with that vision and go with that. That's my understanding, council. Is there any further discussion on ordinance number 15, 2014? If not, I will entertain a motion on ordinance number 15, 2014.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that council approve ordinance number 15, 2014, the foot annexation contingent on agreement with the applicant that the top of the levee be dedicated as public access, as a public access easement with public access is attained on either adjoining property.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second on ordinance number 15, 2014. Is there any further discussion on this ordinance? If not,
Excuse me, Mayor, before you start voting.
go ahead, Councilor Griego.
I want to stress the fact that let's work with this person, you know, even if she's not a member of our community or was a member of our community or not. I think it's council's duty to at least work with people and find a halfway medium so that both sides are happy with this. So I don't know if, is that part of the motion there too, or is just contingent upon we getting the access? Councilor Johnston.
Councilor Griego, do you want the motion reread?
Please.
Would you reread our motion, please, Councilor Johnson?
I can read it again. It's going to be the same. I move that we approve ordinance number 15, 2014, approving the foot annexation contingent on an agreement with the applicant that the top of the levee is dedicated as a public access easement when public access is obtained on either adjoining property.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. We had a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried 5-2 with Councilors Griego and Councilor Vigil voting no.
Thank you, Holly. And thank you, Council. So we'll move on to a public hearing on ordinance number 16, 2014, and ordinance amending sections 21-1 concerning definitions and 21-97 Schedule A concerning use groups and permitted uses, and adding a new section 21-121 specific to the conditions and design standards to be considered during the evaluation of applications for approval of permitted use by special review for the erection, maintenance, and operation of telecommunications facilities. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, sir. This proposed ordinance is in response to a recognized need in our existing zoning ordinance. We were being flooded with applications for telecommunication facilities. We had no standardized way to respond to those applications, and this ordinance will take care of that. Like we talked about last time, this proposed ordinance sees the addition of several definitions specific to cell towers in the telecommunications industry, the creation of use group C33, which is wireless telecommunications facilities, requires permitted use by special review for use group C33 in all zoning districts. It clarifies and outlines the steps and requirements for application. It establishes a gateway and through-town corridor map of those areas in which cell towers will be prohibited. A site selection process that forces applicants to consider existing structures and towers prior to vacant ground. It has co-location requirements. It establishes tower height and setback requirements, including prohibition in and a 100-foot buffer from all residential districts, and it prohibits advertisement on towers and outlines lighting requirements.
Thank you, Pat. And with that, I will, unless there are any questions for Pat at this point in time, I will open the public hearing on ordinance number 16, 2014. Is there anyone to speak in favor or against ordinance 2014? Mr. McCann?
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa. Now, I've discussed this with many people. What this valley offers is amazing. Sunlight all over the place. Best skiing in the world, Wolf Creek. You want to get going on this electronic stuff. They're putting in IPOs all over the states. I've been part of financial markets for decades. What we offer here is amazing. Hunting, fishing. Get this telecommunication stuff and get it in, think about it, and get access to as much stuff as you can. There are people living in Oakland, California, commuting to Silicon Valley. The property values are going to the moon. One thing about this place is it's cheap. And today you can communicate with everybody. You don't have to be talking to them directly. We bring in electronics firms, and with the colleges here and what they're talking about at Trinidad, teaching young people electronics and stuff, you could really turn this place into a gold mine. It already is a gold mine. It's agriculture. But if you want 727s and Home Depot bringing in more college students, I don't think that's going to give it to you. What you want are businesses, and they can train here and stay here. This is a family place. You hear this all the time. They want their kids to stay here. This place is full of elderly. The young people leave. You let them make some money here and stuff. This stuff, what you're talking about, is serious stuff. You're not going to do it overnight. And things are changing so quickly with electronics. Listen, they're putting things all over the place. This valley, what we offer here, is amazing.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on ordinance number 16, 2014? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion or a decision. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'd like to reiterate my words from last meeting. Thank you to Pat and his staff and Heather for working on this. I think it sets us up for success for our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. And Councilor Gillespie.
If there's no further discussion, I propose we pass ordinance number 16, 2014, amending the City of Alamosa zoning code specific to telecommunications facilities.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on ordinance number 16, 2014? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Council. Next up, we have Parks, Recreation, and Library. And Heinz is here to give us an update on the ranch activity and the noxious weed plan. Thank you, Heinz.
Evening, councilors, you bet. Let me get a little time here to get this thing set up here. Have a couple PowerPoints for you.
Thank you.
You'll be able to see what I see here. And also, the PDF versions are at the alamosarec.org site. So the first one I'll be talking about is just the ranch report. Basically,
I think they're back. I think they're back.
okay. Sensitive there. Okay, good. And since we have 3 new counselors on the council, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of background so you can kind of get a basic understanding or knowledge of what the ranch is, what we do there, and then talk about what some summary of the activities that have gone on. We have a management plan for the ranch area. That management plan has a statement that says that the Alamosa City Ranch will be managed to promote an active cattle ranching operation and provide exceptional outdoor recreation and educational opportunities while protecting its natural resources and agricultural resources. As stated in that management plan, there are some goals. In fact, there's 4 of them. One is to manage the selected units to support an active cattle operation, and then kind of maintain a flexibility of how we're going to use that property for the future, both economically and for civic needs, and to include a supply of water for future use. Also, preserve the elements of the ecological and cultural heritage for the benefit of future generations, and provide continued increased recreational opportunities on that property, which would include the trails, wildlife, fishing, camping, environmental education. As we go through there, you'll see that we've done some of the recreation parts already since 2012. The property is currently being leased. That went with Alan Simpson. That started in April of 2012. The lease term is from 1 April to 31 March. The lease renews annually, automatically. Each party can give 100 days prior notice to the renewal date to cancel the lease or upon the mutual agreement of both parties. The lease is non-transferable. We went through an RFP process at that time, and Alan was the one who got it. The lease rent is now set at $10,000 a year, split into 2 payments between March 1st and then October 1st. And part of the lease stipulation was that the number of animal units, which is basically a adult cow with 1 calf, is limited to 200 units on the ranch. If you go into the management plan, you'll find that it was been determined that the ranch itself can approximately host 600 AUs. There was some discussion about dropping it down to 375 in the management plan, but we finally decided to lower it all the way down to 200. City responsibilities, we provide the necessary fence repair materials for the fence repairs and for any new approved fencing that goes on at the ranch, any water assessments that occur, and also any replacements of and major repairs needed for the head gates, diversion boxes, and irrigation structures like culverts. The leasee is tasked to maintain all the ditches, equipment, and all the head gates and diversion boxes while he's leasing the property from the city. Also, he maintains all the fences and gates, and then he provides the labor to put up any new fencing. On his side, he's also responsible for the cost of equipment, fuel, supplies, fertilizer, insecticides, herbicides, seed, and the like for the crop production or pasture land. The ranch is divided up. It's about a little over 1,000 acres now that he's leased out to Alan, and it's divided up into those sections right there of the various different acreages. And it kind of does a map of where those acreages are. As you can tell, the ORA on the left-hand side, that is the Oxbow Recreational Area that was put in last year. And then down below on the south side is the Blanca Vista Park. Starting in 2012, Alan ran about 160 AUs with an additional 6 to 10 bulls for most of the year. And this happens every year during the fall. He retains about 70 of the weaned calves for breeding stock to replace the older cows, and then he moves those between the ranch and adjacent pasture land. During 2012, he had a forage production of about 122 bales of grass hay and 20 bales of alfalfa grass mix. That year, we have a line item in the park's maintenance budget for $7,500. In that year, we spent $5,500 in new irrigation structures and almost $1,900 in fencing. During that year, we also help Alan out when it's on a big project. During 2012, we assisted in the installing some new head gates and diversion culverts. And also, the park staff monitors the backflow from the excess water going back into Rio. And it also includes the water that comes down through our property from splashlands. And that part, that diversion or that gateway into the Rio Grande is right there on the southern part of the ranch, the pond that is being now currently owned by the gardening folks. Healthy Living. And like I said, the major event for that year that we removed almost 68 acres and established the Blanca Vista Park there. That park is also the holding pond for the back 9 irrigation for the golf course. 2013, he ran a few more head of cattle, about 188 AUs with 10 bulls. He almost was at his max. Again, he does the weaning of the calves and running the breeding calves during the fall and winter. Because of the increased number of AUs that he had during that year, the forage production was way down. He only had 20 bales of the alfalfa grass mix. His major activities during 2012, he accomplished some of this weed spraying, mechanical weed control. He did fencing replacement east and north sides of Unit Warm, which is on the far north side of our property. Excavated and rebuilt the ditch running along the west border of Units 12 and 14. Cleaned out the ditch running on the east border of Units 12 and 14, which is also the water drainage for splashlands. And he excavated and rebuilt some ditches running through Unit 2-3. During that year, we had some more expenditures on irrigation structures, almost a little over 8,000, and fencing materials coming close to 3,700. During 2012, the park staff targeted also some additional weed spraying on small areas of the ranch. Since we've incorporated that part of the ranch into the city zone, is now within the city limits. We're responsible for some of the roadside maintenance and mowing along all the way up through the north side of the ranch. And we're still monitoring that backflow to the Rio Grande. 2013, we established the Oxbow Recreation Area, which took about 107 acres off of the ranch. 2014, Alan has about 130 AUs running through the ranch during most of the year. with 6 to 10 bulls. Again, the breeding calves. This year he had no forage production. He's left units 5, 6, 7, and 14 fallow during summer in lieu of that harvesting, and then he's running some of those cows through the winter on those properties. Some of his, the major leasing activities, he has sprayed units 11 and 12, which is right east of the dairy area and right north of Gene Maddox. He's prepping that ground for grass seeding in 2015. He expects to spend about $1,500 on that, and it'll be no cost to the city. He installed a couple of ditch crossings. One was a wooden structure, and the other one was a concrete structure in units 2 to 3, and also no cost to us. Our expenditures for this year, we had a head gate for $850. The biggest thing was the upgrade of the dairy well, where we put in about $3,100 to that, and then Public Works contributed by putting in a new pump house and new lines over to the Gene Maddox's house, and about $3,500. And we're looking at probably spending another $2,500 in fencing materials this year. Again, we targeted some weed spraying in small areas of the ranch, roadside mowing, and also weed spraying on the roadsides, monitoring the backflows, and then we've started surveying the ranch for the noxious weeds, which is ongoing. We've got the northern third of it completed this time. So for next year, and maybe crossing over also a little bit into 2016, like I said, we've got about $7,500 budgeted in the parks budget for ranch maintenance. Some of the things I've talked with Alan about, and which he prioritized with me, was we need to install a new culvert, long culvert into units 2 and 3, and some beaver fencing, because this past year, the beavers got in there and just plugged it up. He couldn't even dig it out. I mean, he couldn't even anchor it out with hooks and stuff, so he had to actually undig it. We've also got a replacement diversion gate for about $800. We're going to cost share that with the adjacent property owner on the west side of our property. We're going to replace some more culverts in Unit 1, slide gates in Units 2, 3. And then, like I said, he's going to reseed the pasture with a pasture grass mix in 11A and B. We've got about 1,900 feet of fencing by the Deschutes up there on the North River Road. And then we're going to move some fencing at no cost from Unit 13 over to Unit 12 and 14, separate those two units as envisioned in the management plan. Depending on how the costs go with the other, the ones we've already mentioned, we've got another 2,000 feet of fencing in northeast section of Unit 7, and then replacing another 2,800 feet east of Unit 4. Questions on the ranch?
Council Johnson?
Hines, on the units, there was plans to fence off the different units. Is that fencing all done, or is this just a step-by-step process?
The one between 12 and 14 has not been done, and that's where we're going to move the one over from 13 over to 14 to accomplish that. Yeah, the other one, that units 2 and 3, that was more of a long electrical fencing, or not permanent fencing on that.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Griego?
Going back to the noxious weeds, we maintain those, the city does. We do the spraying, and when do we do that? And does the leasee do any kind of weed control out there?
Alan does a little bit. He does some mechanical, and he does some spraying himself, but not a whole lot. I think it's going to be more on our shoulders to do that type of spraying. We've done a little bit around Roy Maddox's place, which is the big one. We had some thistles and stuff in there, and it's a continuing process on that because stuff never goes away, really. That's why Jeremy and I have gone out and looked at the 1/3 of the property so far to look at places where we need to concentrate on.
Because, Hines, there's a certain time of the year, and I think John knows this too, that we got to go out there and spray before this stuff, you know, and I know that the leasee has put some cattle up in that area also to kind of help out with some of those weeds, and I don't know how successful they've been with that. So,
you know, overall, one of the things we found out that it's on the ranch is that if the ground gets disturbed, you're more suspect to having the weeds grow, whether it be noxious or not. So anything especially along the irrigation ditches, is problematic, what we've come to find out. There's some other ones in the interior that they'll just have a certain spot where you've got some, mostly knapweed growing. So we're kind of, that's part of the plan. That's going to be part of the PowerPoint. And the second one, we're going to talk about the weed management plan, which includes the noxious weeds. And that's one of the things we're going to do between now and spring is basically find out where stuff's at, what products we can use. We're in talking with Marv Reynolds, the extension agent, to help with some of that. And then timing the spraying is crucial.
Thank you,
Yes.
Councilor Grego. Heinz, I did have a comment specific to next year, 2015, 2016, looking at that. I didn't see any funding for weed control. Are there programs available to help us in any way, shape, or form?
The weed control is in the parks budget. The ranch maintenance is $7,500, the second line item from the weed management line item of $5,000.
I see. Obviously, we have concerned citizens in the community that are looking at the ranch and seeing a lot of noxious weeds out there. Obviously, those are problematic not only for them but for us as well. Do we have any plans in the future to deal with that, with those issues that are near residential areas or that kind of thing?
That is part of what we're developing is the weed management plan, which includes the noxious weeds. The city has ordinances that deals with noxious weeds on private property, and there's procedures that can be enforced by the code enforcement officer to take care of those. The management plan that we're looking at is primarily dealing with city property, which we have plenty of.
And so right now, as Heinz indicated, we have 5,000 that's dedicated to weed management. Once we have that plan identified and set out to what is really going to be needed, both from an identification of the areas and an identification of the timing of it, we'll have a much better handle on what would be needed in future budgets as well.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Gillespie?
Yes, Heinz. I know the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service uses sheep to in the areas that they have weeds. Have we considered that, or do we have any areas that would be beneficial?
It's an option. We have not seriously considered it yet. I mean, that's one of the things we'll have to discuss with staff, how we're going to address some of this. Most stuff that we do on park side is either going to be mechanical, which is mowing, or spraying with herbicide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor
Therefore,
Gillespie.
and just to, I guess, we did look at, we had a gentleman come in about a year or so ago in relation with the county extension service and one of the colleges, I think out of Grand Junction, and they were looking at using a biological agent, basically a bug that kills knapweed. We took them out to the ranch, the area, to show them a couple spots that were really good prospects for that, but they never, they never bid on it, basically. They didn't come back and said, we want to do that.
Councilor Johnson?
Heinz, when we put this plan together, and it's been a couple years, so I may be way off, so tell me if I'm wrong. I thought that we were kind of depending on grazing to take care of some of this weed issue. I know that the cows won't eat all of these weeds, but were we going to relook at this plan if that is the case? Maybe we're undergrazing it. I know we were really concerned about overgrazing, so we cut the AUs way down. Have you had conversation with Mr. Simpson and maybe looked at increasing those AUs to help with this problem?
He has not said anything about increasing the AUs. He's happy with the AUs as they are right now. Looking at the places, like I said, it's disturbed ground that really cultivates a lot of these weeds, and having the water come down the drainage ditch, bringing the seeds down, getting embedded in the sides, and then growing from there. And also we have to be careful about what we use in those areas near water anyway. When we did look at number 6 and number 7, which is in the northeast side, and those are the fallow grounds, you could tell that the weeds there are a little bit more active because the cows didn't go into there. So overall, the weeds through the ranch is not bad. It's just trying to find those spots that we really need to hit and make sure they don't get any bigger, and hopefully reduce the size of it.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. And thank you, Heinz, for that update. Really appreciate it. Are there any other questions of Heinz?
Was he going to go through a weed management?
Yes, my next one.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. All right, so I know on there says about noxious weed plan. Basically, it's a little bit more encompassing. It is actually a weed management plan for the city, and like I said, on city property. And basically, our direction on that is to develop a plan that meets, addresses the city's groundskeeping and weed management needs, and that includes both noxious and not noxious. I mean, we've got areas that in the city that the city owns property that has kochia on it. It has other weeds that, I know puncture weed's on the list, but it's not, it's on like a C list for puncture weed. But we have other weeds that just grow like crazy on our city properties, and we're going to address that along with the noxious side of it. And like I said, our point of weed control for our staff is basically is mechanical and spray, herbicide, chemical. Time those activities, when the best to put down those chemicals and how much, and then trying to find just what we need for the future after we start this thing going. And I'll talk about a little bit what we spent this year, because this year was our first year we had a budget line item for weed management. So just a definition, the standard definition from the state of Colorado, the noxious weeds means any alien plant or parts of an alien plant that have been designated by rule and by the state as being noxious and meets one of the 4 criteria, and aggressively invades or is detrimental to economic crops or native plants, maybe poisonous to livestock. So some of the weeds the cows won't even eat. Be carriers of pests, disease, or parasites, and just detrimental to the management of the pasture land, basically, what it comes down to. Colorado, by state statute from the revised statutes, has a Colorado Weed Management Act under Title 35, Article 5.5, and it mandates that for all persons to control noxious weed on their property, and then the weed control program should be integrated into their approach using all available technologies for effective weed control. And like I said on that, we have ordinance for the private property owners and for the code enforcement officer to address those concerns on empty lots, whatever. And there's a procedure for notifying, ticketing. I don't know if it goes as far as going to court, but there's a procedure for that to go through those to rectify those weed options. According to the Colorado revised statutes, because we have that, we've kind of met the need for a municipality to have a weed management plan, because we have the code of ordinances on noxious weeds. But what we're trying to direct our attention to is to have a plan for taking care of our city property, which has kind of been left on the wayside of a lot of stuff. And we do have a lot of plots going through the city from north to south, including the Choman property, or the Oxbow that's behind their property right there. The state of Colorado has devised a list of A, B, and C by species, and the Department of Agriculture has done that. The A is the worst one. They're the rare noxious weeds that must be eradicated. Statewide, B is the ones that are to be suppressed, and then at least C is also the ones that be controlled as best as possible. Like I mentioned before, there are several ways to control it. There's 5 that they've listed in the state of Colorado. Prevention, you'll see that a lot going up into the high countries. You'll see the signs from the Forest Service only have weed-free hay and stuff like that. Cultural, proper grazing. Actually, probably overgrazing is probably more detrimental to undergrazing, because that exposes the ground to weeds which tend to be much harder than the natural grasses that grow here. Biological, we're interested in that. If they come back, I'm more than willing to try that out on our knapweed. But for the most part, we do mechanical and chemical control. Like I said, 2014 was the first year we had an actual line item for weed management, amounted to $5,000. During this year, we spent $2,400 in equipment to get ready for the future. One thing we did have was already bought, it was back in 1993, and it's going to see much more use. We do have a John Deere truckster. It's got an 18-foot boom on it. It's like an oversized gator with a big tank on the back of it and 18 feet of spray nozzles. So we'll be able to take some of the wide area containment for weeds. This past year we bought a gator. We were going to retire one, but we've repurposed it. We've retrofitted it with a spray tank, pumping system, and then a hand wand for a little bit closer individual addressing of the weeds. And also we bought a brush cutter this year to eliminate some of the woody vegetation that we can get to some of the weeds better using it. And this year, out of that $5,000, we spent over $2,300 in just herbicide. And herbicide, we basically have 3 categories that we use. Most common one is our 2,4-D. That is used on broadleaf, and it's used in the grassed areas, such as at the parks, controlling dandelions. It leaves the grass alone, but kills a lot of the broadleaf weeds. Next one's a glyphosate-based. It's a broad-based spectrum. If it's green, it dies, basically. And then we do a combination of blend to get greater broadleaf control. It adds like 200 broadleaf weeds using that blend as listed. What we've done in the last year or so, we've joined the SLV Weed Management Association. That's their web address. Park staff regularly attends the association meetings about once a month. They're a good source of information, and we use it to we'll incorporate to use our city plan, and that membership helps to develop other relations with other communities and organizations that are members there, and especially, like I said, between the CSU Extension Service. One thing that we dealt with the CSU Extension Service was whether that our staff needed to be licensed to apply these herbicides, and we do not. City employees do not have to be licensed if it's in their daily course of work to apply herbicide on city property. Jeremy Ariano has been designated as the primary staff member in Parks to do the application of herbicide, and he, like this past year, he trained one of the seasonals to join him in that spraying activities. And we've looked at several other different websites to see what they have and what they're concentrating on. But those listed, La Plata has a very good one, Aspen Manitou Springs, and also the state of Colorado has a lot of information which we'll incorporate into that plan. Right now, we're working on a list of locations for weed management, including the noxious weeds, because this plan, like I said, encompasses not just noxious weeds, but also all weeds that we have to deal with. Right now on city property and excluding the ranch, we've identified 27 locations, and that also includes the roadways. And I started from the north side going down to the south, and the Choman property, the Oxbow behind it, is number 1 on that list. The ranch, like I said, we've surveyed about a third of the ranch, and that's primarily units 1 through 4 and 6 through 7. We found that most of the prevailing noxious weeds that we're looking at are the thistle, which is on the A list and the B list, depending on what variety it is, the perennial pepperweed, hoary crest whitetop, the Russian knapweed, the downy brome, and the puncture vine. One of the things that it helps in getting the staff involved, they actually develop an increased sense of awareness of where the weeds are at, that we need to take care of those weeds eventually, and then letting the supervisors know where they're at to be included on the list of locations. Also, this past year, the county just completed their weed management plan, August of 24. Got with the county administrator, and he has sent me a copy of that, which we'll use to incorporate in our plan. In their plan, their primary species they're looking at for the county of Alamosa is Canadian thistle, the hoary crest, knapweed, pepperweed, and then the downy brome. And a secondary, they've got the leafy spurge, the black henbane, quackgrass, and the field bindweeds. So for 2015, I'm looking at, of that 5,000, I think we've got all the equipment that we need. Now it's coming down to just buying enough herbicide during the year to take care of the locations that we have identified in the plan. And part of that would be also to clearly identifying which are the most prevalent noxious weeds. Finalizing that plan and setting up, I like to set up a method on the city website to report noxious weeds, similar to reporting a pothole or graffiti. It's just a link with a fill-out form, and that can get back to the park staff to take care of. Questions?
Thank you, Heinz. Questions from council? Councilor Johnson?
Heinz, we're talking about the entire city for the weed control.
It's entire city that the city owns property.
Exactly.
It's city-owned properties that we're concerned with. We already do a lot of the mowing for those properties, whether it belongs to PD, belongs to Public Works, or any other organization. If it's city property, we mow it.
Okay, so we already take care of a lot of the in-town stuff, and
Yes.
so the 5,000 is gonna be over and above what we're currently doing, correct? Or is that for the entire program?
In the past, a lot of that, the herbicide costs have come out of the miscellaneous line item because there's nowhere else to take it out of. This kind of centralizes where those funds are being taken out and kind of shows that we were spending this much to take care of weeds on city property.
Okay. Does it feel like that's enough funding to take care of the problem?
You know, this will be our first year coming up, so we'll see. I mean, part of it is also trying to find all locations that we need to hit, and then from there, I guess it'll be an ongoing living process here of seeing how much we'll need to deal with future problems.
And do you have plans to get Jeremy licensed for the application? I know you said.
He does not need to be licensed.
He doesn't need to. It just feels to me like if everyone else is required, it would be probably an extra feather in our cap as a city to say we have a licensed herbicide.
We could consider that, yeah. I mean, it's one of the things, that's above and beyond. There's just the way the system's set up, there's a private applicators, there's commercial, and we fall into municipality ones which don't need it.
And I do understand we need to take care of the weeds, and I don't want that to come out of that budget.
Sure. One thing that I have to differentiate between restricted and unrestricted, because we don't need an application license for unrestricted herbicides. The higher class is restricted, which we cannot do, because then you would require a license.
Okay, so we can't do that anyway.
Not the restrictive, no. We're kind of limited into probably those three categories right there of herbicides to use, which we've been using for years. I mean, that's your Roundup, your Honcho, your Rifle, and several other ones that we buy from co-op.
Would using the restricted take care of the noxious weeds better? Do we know that even?
Don't know that. I mean, that
Okay.
would probably be a question that I could deal with Mr. Reynolds at the CSU Extension to see how that works and if it's any better or not. I mean, as far as concerned, what I can see out the restrictive, they're dangerous to use. I mean, those are I think I prefer staff and then for the area, for the populace not to be exposed to any of that stuff. Really.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Griego?
That kind of leads me into my question. If you're using this non-restricted herbicide, are we just spinning our wheels out there? Because if we're not knocking out that thistle or the white top or the Russian knapweed, which mostly I guess the white top has really covered that area where Roy Maddox and that right there part of the ranch. Is it the stuff that we're using right now, is it working?
Yes, it's working. The problem with the noxious weeds, we already have seeds in the ground from years.
Yeah.
And a lot of these seeds last 5, 15, 20 years. So once we start the process, it's going to be an ongoing process of killing emerging weeds every year.
Also, you mentioned that the county has a weed plan also. Are we kind of working with them? Because, if they're buying a bunch of equipment and we're buying a bunch of equipment, it's kind of a duplication. If there's a way that we can work together to accomplish the same thing, I think it would be a cost saving for us and for them, Because I know they put together years back, they had this one sprayer that they put on a vehicle that they would use throughout the county. And I don't know if they're still using it or not, but I think it would be to our benefit and their benefit to work together and maybe, cost saving.
Yeah, equipment-wise, I think we're set. I mean, we're a small operation on small pieces of property, basically. And they're more along all the roadsides if they have to get to it and stuff. I think with our 18-foot boom, we can do what little roadside we have, going north of town over to the north side of the property, of the ranch property. Most of it's going to be small area stuff. Most of it's going to be hand-wanded, which we've already taken care of with repurposing the gator.
One more question, it just came to me now.
Sure.
On the levee, do we do the mowing and weed control on levees?
Yes, we're
On both
responsible for that
sides?
also.
We're
Yep.
responsible for that also?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Johnson?
Heinz, looking through the costs for the ranch, I wrote those down. It looks like we're spending out more than the leasee is paying in. Is it time to look at that and maybe figure out what that property,
Sure.
maybe reevaluate the lease?
Sure.
If we're gonna take over the weed control, it feels like maybe it's time to reevaluate the lease agreement and the lease payment.
Sure. Alan's talked to me, and he says he has no qualms about increasing the lease. I don't know how that would work on the contract itself, but that's fine. The first question?
I think it all was around the lease and the costs of the lease, and is it time to reevaluate that? Do we have some comparative properties, and I really feel good about Alan being out there because I think he's a good steward and he takes good care of our property.
Sure.
But I think we need to get a good value.
I know in the past, he ran cattle through the Oxbow Recreation Area, so we've already taken 107 acres out from the grazing plan when it first originated. And for the Blanca Vista Park, we've restricted cattle there for quite a number of years, so that hasn't affected that lease that we're currently in.
And I know when we were doing that sort of thing,
Yeah.
we considered that we would be downsizing his ability to graze because we'd be taking property from him, and the potential to do that is still there.
So far, the survey of the ranch, it's not a wide area spring. It is limited in size for the most part, and we probably will not know exactly how much that's going to cost us until we survey the rest of it and also go out there and actually do it. And how many applications we're going to have to do it on.
Okay, thanks, Heinz.
Yeah.
Councilor Coleman?
Heinz, I like the idea of having a place on our website to where citizens can report noxious weed issues. I think that will help us in identifying areas quickly so that we can address them promptly. When do you think this access would be available?
That we're looking probably springtime before the growth starts. That's probably we're planning on having the plan done by then. So it'll probably be the March, April timeframe.
Okay.
Because at this time, nothing's growing and won't grow until the warmer weathers come in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Is there anything further for Heinz? Heinz, thank you very much for that report.
Okay.
Almost cut you short with the weed issue, but obviously weeds are a major problem throughout the valley, and with the winds in the springtime, it's almost something that you almost can't handle. But we appreciate a lot of the progress that you're making in that area, and we look forward to some of the recommendations you're going to make. I kind of agree with Councilor Johnson that if we need to start spending more on weed control by increasing the lease, well, maybe that's a path we need to take, but making sure that we fall into compliance with the state as well as with the county, I think is imperative. Someone, I think it was Charlie, mentioned maybe joining forces with the county and maybe the purchase of the herbicide itself, if it's that expensive, that we might buy it in bulk, maybe get a discount. That might be something we could do in trying to minimize the cost for the city.
That's a good option, it really is. That's a good idea. Okay.
Thank you, Heinz.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Council. It's been quite a while here, and I know one of our councilors left. Do you want to take a break, or shall we just go on? Next up are committee reports. Who has a committee report for us this evening? Councilor Coleman.
Mayor, I have a committee report. The San Luis Valley Council of Governments will again be offering many grants of $5,000 or less to communities who belong to the COG starting January the 1st. These grants are matching cash grants, one-for-one, and can be used for a variety of items, projects that increase the value or benefits in areas that are commonly linked in economic development, such as increased tourism, jobs, housing, quality of life, and recreation. Some examples of how these funds can be used is for planning, facade improvement, street lights, benches, and etc. I also would like to report that some of the members of the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group board, members from the local community banks, county officials, and other community members met with some of the USDA rural development staff and went over the Ladders of Opportunity initiative, which was created to help move more lower-income participants to the middle-class income status. This is the second round of this designation on a federal level, and the USDA Rural Development chose the San Luis Valley as one of 3 locations. This is an opportunity to shine a light on the San Luis Valley and bring in significant federal dollars into our community. Finally, with the SLV DRG, they received a $13,000 transit grant from CDOT to create a transit planning council. This council will bring in all of the transit providers and any group that provide transportation services, and then they will have an assessment done to determine who's providing what services. This is one of many steps in improving transportation access to the people in our community. That's all I have to report today.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Councilor Gillespie.
Yes, the library board met last night. We had election of officers. Larry Greenwood is the chair. Laura Brunel is the vice chair. Joshua Lake, secretary. We're going to be doing policy discussions on patron behavior, code of conduct, and rules of conduct for the library, and discussing that in the next 2 months. The last book sale of the year was November 1st, and in the July and August time period, they raised over $2,700. I did not hear a figure for the November sale. The library literary magazine is being printed at this time. There will be a literary review in this council chambers on December 5th at 6 p.m. The public is invited. The authors will read literature and poems that they've written. I advise everyone to come and hear that. Over the last 2-month period, September and October, the library has added over 870 new pieces of material, which includes books, magazines, audiobooks, and DVDs. As for the golf board, we have a golf board meeting tomorrow evening. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Gillespie. Anyone else have a committee report? We'll move on to staff announcements. Heather?
To expand just slightly on what Greg has indicated, at the golf board tomorrow, we will review some recommended changes to the agreement. Based on those discussions, we hope to bring something back before council at a December meeting that would include those discussions. And other than that, I believe the only other item I want to bring up is that city offices will be closed next week for the Thanksgiving holiday, Thursday the 27th and Friday the 28th.
Thank you, Heather. There are any other staff announcements? We'll move on to local liquor licensing authority actions. Tonight we have a special events permit application, Fighting for a Cause, MMA, event on December the 6th, 2014 at the Alamosa Family Recreational Center. And this is brought forward by, who is this going to be the rec center that's going to visit about, or is this Mr. Gonzalez, or who's going to visit? Mr. Gonzalez, or please approach the podium and tell us a little bit about this special events permit application.
Mr. Mayor, before we start this discussion, Mr. Gonzalez is a relative of mine, so I will remove myself from the discussion and I will abstain from the voting.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. We appreciate that. Go ahead, sir.
How's it going? My understanding was that Mr. Darrell Cooper had protested it, and so they asked me to attend. So.
Mr. Gonzalez, would you give us your name and
Sorry.
and address for the
It's been a
record,
while-
please?
It's been a while, yeah. Jason Gonzalez, 916 Weber Court.
Thank you, sir.
I think also if you could just describe what the event's going to be. I think also some of the conditions of working with the police department for security and items like that as well.
Okay, yeah, there are a couple of guys that are new. I've been doing this since 2006. I have hired the Alamos Police Department to be on hand through the event. Sam Mestis has already confirmed several officers that have signed up to do it, so I'll be paying them as off-duty officers to work the event. I will have a little bit of details about the event. It is sanctioned by the Colorado State Athletic Commission. They'll be in attendance that evening. I've hired an ambulance, which will be on standby throughout the whole event, at the event. I'll have a doctor on hand at the event. My alcohol sales, it is through my nonprofit, Fighting for a Cause. I'll be donating all my proceeds from that to a local organization. It's the Valley Girl Cheerleaders. That's the young youth group cheerleaders. They've qualified to go to Florida to a national competition. So being that there's a few of the girls, pretty much half the team that couldn't afford to be able to go, we're going to try to help them out by giving them all the proceeds from that. So outside of that, I mean, that's really all the information I do have about it. I provided a little bit of a map of how we do it. It's always been the same. This is, I think, probably the fourth or fifth time I've used the recreation center to do this. We use the small gym to serve the alcohol, and it is permitted in both gyms. We do have a separate station where we ID and band 21 and over, and so we also sell drink tickets separately than the beer dispensary, and so.
I do think the anticipation for tonight, the city clerk did have a conversation with Mr. Cooper. His letter was included in the packet for council review. He had indicated he would not be able to attend, but he essentially wanted to make sure council was aware of the letter. His concern, I believe, is related to the title of the facility where we have the title family included. And that was the extent of his thoughts.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Griego?
Just kind of following Heather's comments, Mr. Cooper did have a concern because it is a family recreation facility and the use of alcohol in a facility like that, and what it was, what we're really showing with the family recreation type of deal. That was some of his major concerns.
Yeah.
And that stuff, so.
The last time I did the recreation center, which would have been about a year and a half ago, I don't have an exact date. Same thing, Darrell Cooper protested it, brought it to city council. Same reason, because it's an Alamos Family Recreation Center. But, I mean, it's one of those things where I got married 10 years ago, and me and my wife held our reception there, and alcohol was allowed. It's in the policies of the city, and the recreation center that alcohol is permitted with the proper permits and so on. I've done so every time. I purchase the insurance. I insure the facility, my spectators, and my fighters. All liability falls on me. In addition to the police department, I have security. We have our private security company where we supply a lot of security. We have more security than is needed. We've never had a single problem where law enforcement, security, anything's been needed. We don't serve alcohol in excess. You know, it's one of those things where people like to go have a beer, watch an event. It's like going to a Bronco game, you know. You go, you get a beer, watch an event, you go home. But it's kind of like it's targeted to my events every time. I mean, if you look at weddings and different things that are held there, this isn't a first.
And I kind of disagree with you because I personally myself have questioned the fact that we even have functions like that where we have alcohol and family recreation. We're competing against other private people that do host stuff like that. And for the city to use taxpayers' money to compete against taxpayers, I think is wrong. But my comment also is, and you kind of answered it a little bit, we've never had problems out there.
No.
I mean, fighting, and you say you control the alcohol, and did you cut the alcohol way before the, like on events, they cut it, like on Bronco games, I think they cut it at halftime or something like that?
We ended, I mean, we serve pretty much up until the end of it. I mean, we end them at you're talking like 2.5 hour event.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not going to serve alcohol for an hour, and it'll cost me more by the time I purchase. I mean, I purchase all the beer and everything from Budweiser, and they're on hand. I mean, I got to get a license to do this.
Sure.
I mean, and so, but no, I mean, we always run it straight through the end. And I mean, and yeah, I've never had a single problem. I mean, I see Chief Oakes is in the audience, and I mean, he can attest to that as well. And so.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm really not competing against anybody either, because no one outside of Adams State and the rec center could hold the capacity that I'm, needing.
Our attorney's wanting me to make sure that we get on the record that both the applicant and Mr. Cooper were noticed for this meeting.
Councilor Stefano?
My only comment is, I have a little difference of opinion on this because of, we have a lot of domestic violence in Alamosa, and to promote this type of fighting, I don't know, to me, it kind of promotes people. We have a lot of violence going on, a lot of anger in people right now, and to me, it just kind of goes against the grain for me. And then serving alcohol kind of fuels the fire. My opinion.
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2006, not just in Alamosa. I've promoted over, I can tell you, I've promoted 47 events since 2006. My track record as far as things like that, I mean, I established your concerns back in 06, actually, with City Council. When the very first time I stood in front of City Council, myself with Ray Casillas, and wanted to do an event here, they called it human cockfighting in the paper and at City Council. We opened up an invite to all City Council to come see what we do, which it's a professional event. I mean, it's sanctioned by the Colorado State Athletic Commission. My fighters aren't people that I'm pulling out of the crowd of the bar, wanting to bar tap. It's not a tough man competition from back in the 90s. They're athletes. The respect shown in the cage is, not what I think you're thinking it is. Which I extend my invite to you as well to come see what the event's all about, so you can witness firsthand what we do. I put a lot of time, a lot of effort into these, and that's the best I can explain it is it's a professional event. I do these, I mean, these are community events. When I do an event here, I'm not making money on them. I do it because every everywhere I go, people are asking me, you know, when are you gonna do another event? When are you gonna do another event? We do the Tingley Coliseum in Albuquerque, you know, I mean, that's where we do well, you know. Here, it's because I sell out hotels, I fill restaurants, I bring people from, you know, North Dakota, New Mexico, Kansas. I mean, I bring fighters from all over the place. I bring well-known fighters. I bring celebrities to town. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things that everybody enjoys what I do, but a lot of people don't like to admit it because I've never gotten recognition for, you know, selling out hotels. Most of the time, you know, I don't get much support from the city in certain aspects. Out of state, I've done 3 events there, and they've made it just, you know, almost impossible to do. But there's a lot of benefit for them when I do them. So, you know, it is a well put together event, though. And as far as like domestic violence, drinking, and all that, you know, all the fighting that night at my event stays in the cage. We see to it. When people leave there, it's just like going to a bar anywhere else. What people choose to do in their lives has nothing to do with the event I'm putting on. You know, it's like saying someone beat up their wife because the Broncos lost and he drank too much. You know, it's not Manning's fault, just like it's not, you know, on me. So.
Councilor Vihil?
Mr. Gonzalez, how many people do you expect to be at this event?
It's hard to say, but I'd like to see 600. I'd be happy if there's 400. It's hard to say right now. This is probably one of the later planning events I've done. Usually by this point I've already got tickets, a certain amount sold, everything else. We're already putting tickets on sale this week. But I would anticipate 300 to 400.
Thank you.
And on another note, just for comparison, Demolition Derby, about 4,000, 0 police. And I know that because we work it on security, 3 security, private security, 0 police. My event, 300 to 400, law enforcement and security. So.
Councilor Coleman?
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez, what percentage of liquor sales will be going towards the
100%.
youth cheerleaders? Could you say that one more time?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
So, and that's something too that I'm going to start. Every time I do an event, it's always a question of where it goes, and that's something that from now on I track personally with, like, for instance, if I get to the Boys and Girls Club, I expect something from them so I could show the next person and the next person. And this one, it will be going to Valley Girl Nation Cheer, and they will get, outside of what we pay Budweiser for the cost of the usage on everything, they'll get 100%.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. My perspective, Mr. Gonzalez, is that this is a public place. It's just like a park. And they have a special events permits for parks that are obtained by whoever wants to have a get-together or an event there, like the Early Iron people. They have an event. And being that it is a public place and there are actually no legitimate issues with your events whatsoever, I would believe that if people want to change policy specific to any public property that the city owns, that they should come forward and entertain a policy change that would enable us to say, we're not going to have alcohol at any public events on public property. But being that we don't have that, and you have not had any legitimate reasons for being denied, I have no reason to deny this application. Councilor Vihil. Oh, Councilor Gillespie.
I agree with the mayor. Their past performance has indicated that there's no reason for us to have issue with this. It's a very well-run event with 100% of the proceeds going to a nonprofit, plenty of security. I would motion that we promote the special events permit application, and I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and second on special events permit application at Alamosa Family Recreation Center for Fighting for a Cause, MMA event. Is there any further discussion on this application? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried 5-1 with Councilor Stefano casting the no vote and Councilor Johnson abstaining.
Thank you, Council. Next up is council comment. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, guys.
Do we have any council comments? Councilor Johnson?
I do, Mayor. As I talked to you earlier, my employment has changed, so it'll change the need for me to get replacements on a couple of my committee assignments.
Thank you. We've got a couple of openings. Councilor Johnson is a primary on the tree board, and Councilor Stefano is, I believe, the alternate on the tree board. Councilor Stefano, would you move up to the primary on the tree board? Okay, and so that means we're going to need an alternate for the tree board. Is anyone willing to take on that? Tell us again when they meet, Rusty.
They normally meet on the first Tuesday of each month at noon. Is that correct, Hines?
First Wednesdays? Do they meet on the?
First Wednesday's noon.
First Wednesday at noon. And they normally have meetings about, they'll go 2 or 3 months without a meeting, so probably 7 a year.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Is anyone willing to do or become the alternate on the tree board? Does anybody want to think about it?
Want to stay alternate?
Well, he can't attend the meetings.
I guess I'll volunteer.
We have Councilor Stefano and Councilor Griego on the tree board. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The other opening that we have is Councilor Johnson is an alternate on the Parks and Rec Board, correct? And so we need an alternate for that.
When do they meet?
They normally meet, 11:30 on, Hines, remind us, the second Thursday?
And I think I should add for the alternate, I do not think I've had to attend one meeting yet.
And with the rec board, it's every other month, 6 times a year.
Thank you, Hines. So we've got, I can't be the alternate because I'm mandated by, and you're on there also as well, Charlie.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. So staff, I think we've filled those positions.
Just to clarify, that is during the day at 11:30, so you feel like, okay, we'll put you down.
Thank you very much, Heather, and thank you.
I would volunteer, Jan, if you feel you cannot make that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Then we have Councilor Gillespie that has volunteered for that. Councilor Johnson, thank you for your many years of service on those two boards. Appreciate that. And do we have any further council comment? Councilor Diego.
I had one, I got approached by a constituent over on 10th Street, Pat, and apparently we're having problems down there with the semis going down through 10th Street. And he was wondering if there was a way that we could put maybe a sign that no through traffic for trucks over a certain weight limit. I know we have those over in my ward, over on Tremont, and I don't know what's the process.
What we can do is take a look at that. We
Okay.
get those requests and we'll let council
Okay.
know. And if you want to share your constituent's name, we can follow up with him as well.
Sure. All right, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor, thank you.
Councilor Coleman?
Yes, just a comment to the community as a whole. I noticed from reading the expenditure report, our October general sales tax revenues were down about $12,000, a little bit over $12,000 from last year. From looking at the report, it looks like usually sales tax revenue goes down in October and November, but it bounces back in the month of December. So I would just like to encourage our citizens, whenever possible this holiday season, to try to shop locally and support our local businesses, because when we shop locally, our dollars stay in our community and they circulate more. And this cash flow allows for more good-paying jobs to stay in the San Luis Valley. So that's my comment that I would like to send out to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. And I would like to encourage our motorists to be careful when there are pedestrians in crosswalks or approaching crosswalks. I'm a walker. I'm many times in crosswalks, and sometimes motorists are not quite as courteous as they need to be. And with following this accident that we had, and I know there was no crosswalk in the area, please be very diligent as a motorist and a pedestrian that now that it's getting darker earlier, you know, we are all at risk. And also watch out for the deer. You don't want to hit a deer. So that's my council comment for this evening. Council, we've got a need for an executive session tonight. I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make that motion that we go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 in parentheses 4, in parentheses B, for a conference with the city attorney to receive legal advice concerning MCDC self-reporting window.
I'll second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the executive session? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And after we come out of executive session, back into regular session, there will be no business discussed. Thank you.